evening and welcome back to our children's virtual program Book Tasting, where I read the first few pages of new books that are coming to the children's collection. So our new book for this evening is The Puffin Keeper. And if you're not sure about what a puffin is this bird right here, black and white. It almost kind of looks like a penguin, but we typically see them in North America, specifically in the state of Maine. Now, unfortunately, you're not going to see any on the mainland. You actually have to visit the different islands in Maine, off the coast of Maine, to possibly see a puffin. And I visited a few islands in Maine, and I unfortunately has never seen any puffins, so they must be pretty rare. One stormy night, a four-masted schooner was driven onto the rocks by angry seas. The sails were soon in tatters, 3 of her masts broken. She was helpless in the towering waves and was sinking fast. From high in his lighthouse, Benjamin Postlethwaite saw it all. He knew at once what he had to do. He jumped into his boat to rescue the passengers. Among them was a young boy. That boy was me, Alan. This was the start of an incredible adventure. Alrighty, as always, I will be reading the first few pages. It was Benjamin Postlethwaite's job all his long life to make sure the lighthouse shone brightly high up in the lighthouse on Puffin Island where he lived. Not once in all his years as the lighthouse keeper had he ever let his light go out. All the sailors and seafarers that sailed or steamed past the lighthouse in the fog would hear the foghorn sounding, see his light guiding them through, and be grateful for it. Without Benjamin Postlethwaite, many of the ships would have come too close to the shore around Scilly and be driven onto the rocks, and many sailors would have been drowned. But sometimes even the brightest light on a lighthouse cannot save a ship. One stormy night, a four-masted schooner, Pelican she was, sailing from New York and bound for Liverpool with 30 passengers and crew on board, was driven by angry seas onto the rocks just off the Scilly Isles in the western approaches. The sails were soon in tatters, 3 of her masts broken. She was helpless in the towering waves and was sinking fast. From high in his lighthouse, Benjamin Postlethwaite saw it. He heard the timbers grinding and groaning as she settled on the rocks, heard the cries of the people on board. He knew at once what he had to do. That night, Benjamin Postlethwaite saved 30 lives, men, women, and children. My own mother was one of them, and I was one of those children, Alan Williams. 5 years old I was. Somehow, I don't remember how, just before the ship sank, we were all able to clamber down or jump over to one of the rocks, where we found ourselves stranded still at some distance from the shore, with barely room to stand and at the mercy of the huge waves crashing around us, every one of them threatening to wash us away. All Mother and I could do was cling to one another and hope. Then, when all hope seemed lost, we saw through the darkness a boat coming for us, one man in a tiny rowing boat that was riding mountainous seas. Benjamin Postlethwaite rowed out to our rescue that night, back and forth 5 times from the shore, through the surging surf in his little boat, and brought us all safe to the island. In the warmth of his lighthouse, wrapped in blankets, he gave us hot sweet tea and cookies, and we sat out the raging storm around his fire, rubbed one another down, and warmed ourselves through, each of us astonished at his bravery and his calmness. Every one of us must have thanked him a dozen times from the bottom of our hearts. He hardly said a word to anyone in reply, scarcely even looked at us. We owed our lives to the silent, unsmiling man. I sat watching him as he made pot after pot of tea, as he attended to our every need, did all he could to make us comfortable and warm. Alrighty, so I am ending it there. If you are interested in The Puffin Keeper, it is now available inside the children's collection. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week for a new book.